All right, we are just getting word that Donald Trump is finally going to be meeting with John Bolton, our former UN ambassador. Bolton, you might recall, very early on, actively supporting Donald Trump. He hasn't got a lot of recognition from the Trump camp for that, but he was in a small pool of folks being considered for Secretary of State. Apparently, he still is. But it comes at a time when a lot of those people who were early backers and supporters of Donald Trump haven't gotten plum assignments. Rudy Giuliani is still dangling in the wind there, still presumably for the same position, Secretary of State. Oddly enough, a position that could go to Mitt Romney, of all people. Newt Gingrich couldn't find a cabinet position that was suitable to him, or even presumably offered one to him, and he was an early supporter and backer of Donald Trump. I could go on about Chris Christie, who is now entertaining becoming a hot dog vendor outside this building because no cabinet positions appear to be materializing. That, of course, is just a joke, but I like it. No one else really did. He is now considering that as Governor Christie a role to play, maybe heading up the RNC, the Republican National Committee, to replace Reince Priebus, who's going to be chief of staff in the Trump administration. But the upshot there is that sometimes suck-ups need not apply. They need not get or be considered for a job. Enter Ted Cruz, the outspoken former presidential candidate and Texas senator, who apparently is being bandied about as a possible Supreme Court pick to the Federalist Bre Payton, whether she buys that. What do you think, Bre?
I think it's been amazing to watch Donald Trump just really expose that Ted Cruz is just another politician like all the other guys. You know, all throughout the primary cycle, Ted Cruz was very verbal and very outspoken in his opposition, and he tried to make his opposition to Donald Trump appear like a principled argument. You know, and at the RNC, he kind of punted his endorsement and kicked that down the road. And then later on, as soon as it became politically expedient for him to endorse Trump, he very quickly reversed his position, you know. And so now we know that Donald Trump is just kind of seems to be doing this again, dangling this potential Supreme Court position in front of him in an attempt to bend him to his will. And I think, you know, this lesson really just makes it obvious that everyone has a price. And I guess for Ted Cruz, that price is a position on the Supreme Court.
You know, that's very well put. I'm glad you said it and not me, Bre. But one of the things I did notice, and I was making light of, but I'm not too far off the truth here, that suck-ups need not apply. That, you know, those who were early backers, quite the opposite of what you were just saying, the early backers who did everything they could to help Donald Trump, and obviously in their own interest to get on board early. Chris Christie comes to mind, as you mentioned, Ted Cruz with these overtures he's been making since. I could go on about Rudy Giuliani and all this. They're not been rewarded for it. So what are we to make of that?
Sure. Well, he knows that Christie and Giuliani have his back. So he doesn't need to keep doing things in order to keep them happy. He already knows.
But will he always have their back, or does it matter at this point? You've been elected president. You don't need him.
Right. That's exactly the point, is that, you know, he got what he needed from them, and now they're not useful. Right. What is useful is getting Mitt Romney and Ted Cruz to suck up to him and very publicly apologize and reverse their positions and embarrass themselves, which is exactly what they're doing now. We know that Donald Trump is obsessed with apologies, and he's very good at enacting revenge. Right. Like during the White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011, when Obama tried to make a fool of him, he now has made a very big fool of President Obama. Right. So he is very good at doing this.
I think that 2011, I think it was 2011, Bre, where that planted the seeds for his eventual White House run. I could be wrong, but I think that he has a long memory. And I'm wondering if these dinners and this dangling with Mitt Romney proves it, that he's never intending to offer him that Secretary of State job. And I'm wondering if he doesn't pick Mitt Romney, and you're Ted Cruz, and you're seeing that, are you going to avoid any courtship at all for the Supreme Court, because it could all be kabuki theater?
Well, I think at this point, Ted Cruz has made such a fool of himself, you know, reversing his position about Donald Trump and revealing that he really is a Washington politician just like the rest of them. And he's already exposed that all this political grandstanding and ideological, you know, pontificating is really just a bunch of horsewash, right? So we know that this is who Ted Cruz is. He's already exposed himself to be a big fat phony. I don't really see a downside in continuing to suck up to Donald Trump at this point.
Don't beat around the bush here, Bre. Tell me how you really feel. Then let me ask you this before I let you go. And it's kind of a weird issue, but Trump has managed to make this process very, very interesting, very, very riveting. He's done so when he makes announcements, not being there for the announcement. This is very unusual. Most president-elects or presidents-elect, whatever the term is, they're there with their nominee for the cabinet position. He makes a press announcement. The whole world knows about it, but he's not there. It's as if he doesn't want to get too close to that process, just the process itself. What do you think?
I think you're right that he has definitely been vague about all of these positions, this entire time. And I think you're right that it is a purposeful attempt, purposeful thing that he's doing this in order to make the process seem like this really vague, magical thing. And in doing that, he is drawing these people out of the woodwork and getting them to expose themselves as big fat phonies.
Okay, Bre. I do not want to get on your bad side, Bre. Thank you very, very much. Bre Payton, the Federalist millennial politics reporter. I think she's right. Everything she's